Who knew CSS styling could be so easy? What if I told you it's as easy as copying and pasting? And no, not from Stack Overflow, from Shadcn UI. In this video, I'll show you how easy it is to use, and we'll build this amazing looking UI in just 20 minutes. Shadcn is not a component library, but it is a collection of reusable React components that you can use to build your applications or even create your own component library. If you want to, you can just copy and paste any of the components that you need, or even better, just use their CLI to make sure that you get everything set up correctly. Now, you don't even have to install Shadcn UI as a dependency itself. There are no NPM packages for it, in fact. Instead, Shadcn UI combines two amazing libraries, Radix UI and Tailwind CSS. Now, I've heard some people call it Radix. I call it Radix because I think it's rad. So if you're unfamiliar with Radix, it provides unstyled, accessible components, and this is the key. It's not opinionated and it allows for full customization, but it does all of the accessibility related implementations for you, which can be a lot to think about if you're building something from scratch. So it figures all of this out for you with full keyboard navigation, assistive technology support, collision detection, and many more accessibility considerations. And then of course, there's Tailwind CSS. This is an amazing utility-first CSS framework that allows you to use predefined utility classes directly in your markup instead of writing out all of the CSS by hand. It saves a lot of time and hassle. Now you might be wondering, why not just use Radix? Why do we need Shadcn? Well, Radix is great, but it comes unstyled, which again is great for customizability, but I'm a little lazy and I'd like to start with something that looks nice as a base, and then I can easily customize it. And that's what Shadcn provides. It gives us great looking components with basic styling out of the box, and plus you can easily update the existing styles. That's because, again, these are just copy and paste boilerplate components, not a UI library that gets installed. These components will live right here in your React components folder. Here's an example. This is the button component. Oh, and did I mention TypeScript support? Now it also supports dark mode out of the box, and a brand new feature of Shadcn UI are themes. You can now choose from several predefined themes and just copy and paste the CSS variables, and then everything in your app will have the updated theme styles. So I'm going to walk you through all of this throughout this video. So first things first, how do we get Shadcn UI set up so that we can start using it? Well, since these are just React components, they can be used in various React-based frameworks. So I'm going to walk you through the setup in Astro, Vite, Gatsby, Remix, and Next.js, all of the major React frameworks. Now, there are timestamps if you want to skip to a specific framework. After I go through all of the different ways that you can set it up, we're going to start building out our application, which is basically the same no matter which framework you use. So for that, I'm going to use Next.js. And we're going to use the new Next.js 13.4 app directory because it has some amazing new features that are really helpful. All right, let's see how we can get Shadcn working in Astro. So the first thing that I'll do is npm create astro at latest, and I'm going to do that right here in this directory. And I don't need any sample files, so we'll just create an empty project. We're going to install the dependencies, yes. Are we going to use TypeScript? Yes. And strict, yes. GitHub repo, I'm going to say no. All right, next we're going to add React. So npx astro add React, and then we'll say yes to all of the questions here. All right, and now we're going to install Tailwind. So npx astro add Tailwind. Again, we'll say yes to everything. All right, now let's open up our tsconfig, and we're going to add some compiler options. So base URL of period, and then we're going to add in our resolve paths. We'll save that and go back into our terminal. And now we're going to initialize Shadcn. So that's going to be npx shadcn-ui at latest init. And let's answer these questions. Are we going to use TypeScript? Yes. Which style would you like? I'm going to choose New York. The base color of slate, that's good. My global CSS file. So this is Astro. So I'm going to say it's going to be in ./source/styles/globals CSS. And then are we going to use CSS variables? Yes. Our Tailwind config. Okay, so this is going to be tailwind.config.cjs. And then our aliases for components, sure. Our utils, yep. React server components, I'm gonna say no. And then proceeding creating the components JSON, yes. Awesome. All right, so that is done. Now what we need to do is, let's go ahead and close this. We're gonna go into our astroconfig.mjs file, and we're gonna add some extra Tailwind configurations here. So I'm going to apply base styles, and I'm gonna set that to false. This is going to prevent Tailwind from applying the base styles twice, since we're defining that in our global CSS as well. So I'm gonna save this. And there's one issue that I came across, Tailwind config. Let's open that up. And we will see here that it is not going to look at any of the Astro files or any other files besides TypeScript and TS and TSX. So we need to actually fix that. If all that we're using this for is React and we don't care about the Astro files, then you're okay. But if you want to use the .astro files, then we'll need to update this. All right, so this last line here under source, I'm going to update that to include any of these extensions here. So Astro, HTML, JavaScript, JSX, Markdown, Svelte, TypeScript, Vue, any of them that have Tailwind in them should be compiled. All right, we'll save that. And now let's open up our terminal and let's just do an npm run dev to make sure that everything's working. All right, so that's running on localhost 3000. Looks like it's working. Let's go over to our source and then pages and index.astro. And we're actually not importing our global styles yet. So let's go ahead and import our global styles at /styles/globals.css. And we can see the Tailwind styles have now been applied. Let's go ahead and add, let's just change this to a div, and we're going to add a class. Let's make it a grid, and we'll place items center, and let's make the height screen. So 100% viewport height. There we go. So now Astro is right there in the middle. So now that we have everything set up, let's see how we can use a ShadCDN component in Astro. So if we go over to the documentation on ShadCDN, you can see all the different components that you can use. And so you could actually go to the code here and just copy and paste this component into your application and it would work just fine. But just to make things so much easier, there's a CLI. So let's just copy this CLI command, and then let's open up our terminal, and we're gonna go ahead and kill the server, and let's go ahead and paste in that command. So npx shadcdn-ui at latest add button, and then we're gonna say yes, go ahead and add those dependencies. And again, this is using Radix UI and Tailwind, and so it has imported that button. And so now if we go over to source, components, under UI, we have a button. And so this is the ShadCDN button. We can see that it's using Radix UI, and it has all of these different variants here. So the default, and these are the styles being applied from Tailwind utility classes. So we have the default style, destructive, outline, secondary, ghost, link. We have different sizes that we can choose from: default, small, large, and icon. If we wanted to customize these at our own variant, at our own size, we can easily do that. And then we can see, of course, it has TypeScript support, and then the button is actually rendered here. So we can use this component now anywhere in our application. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go back to index.astro, and let's go ahead and add it right here where the Astro is. Let's go ahead and use button, and let's just say click me. And then we need to import that button. So let's import button. It almost got it right. So it's button from components, UI, and then button. All right, let's save that. And then let's go ahead and npm run dev, start our server again and check it out. And there we go. We have a button in our Astro project now. If I go back here to the button, I can say size is going to be large. Now it's large. I can say the variant is going to be outline. There we go, outline. Ghost was another one. Pretty cool. All right, so now you can import any of the other components into your application using the same method. All right, now let's set up ShadCDN using Vite. So the first thing that we're going to do in an empty directory is we're going to npm create Vite at latest, And I'm going to do that in this directory. So period at the end. We are going to set up React. We're going to use TypeScript. And that was pretty quick, but we still have to run the npm I for npm install, let everything install. All right, next we're going to npm install as a dev dependency Tailwind CSS, Post CSS, and Auto Prefixer. And then we're going to npx Tailwind CSS and init-p. So we're going to initialize our Tailwind configuration. So we'll let that run. All right, so that created our Post CSS config, our Tailwind config, and we do need to go into the TS config now. And we're going to add some compiler options here. So we're going to add our base URL of period and then our resolve paths. So let's save that. We'll go back to our terminal. Now we're going to npm install our Node.js TypeScript types. Okay, now next step is to go to our Vite config file, and we need to help it resolve some paths in here as well. So we're going to import path from path. And then after React here, we're going to resolve and set as an alias at, and then resolve path dot source. So that's the initial setup. Let's go back to our terminal. Now we can initialize shadcdn. So npx shadcdn-ui at latest init. Now we're going to answer some questions. So yes, we're going to use TypeScript. I'm going to choose the New York style, slate as my base color. My global CSS file, that's going to be under source/index.css. We're going to use CSS variables, yes. Tailwind config is tailwind.config.js, so I'll hit enter. We'll do an alias for our components and for our utils, yes. And then React server components, I'll say no. And then yes, proceed with creating the components JSON file. Amazing. All right, so everything is set up now for that. Let's close this. And now if we go into source and then app.tsx, let's go ahead and get rid of all the boilerplate stuff in here. And then we can just change this to a div. Let's add a class, and we're going to say grid, place items, center. Let's do a height of screen to make it a full height. And then in here, let's just say Vite is awesome. Let's open up our terminal, npm run dev, and let's check it out. All right. So we're running on localhost 5173. And Vite is awesome. Back over here in our app.tsx, we actually don't need any of this stuff anymore. We don't need our use state. Let's go ahead and save that. Cool. And now that everything is set up in Vite, let's actually use shadcdn in this application. So if we go over to the shadcdn documentation, let's go ahead and make this a little bit wider. And you can see all of the different components that we can import into our application. We're going to look at this button here. So you could actually go to the code. You could just copy and paste this code into your application and it would just work. But to make things so much easier, let's just use the CLI. So we're going to copy this. Let's go over to our terminal and we're going to kill our server. And let's go ahead and paste in that command. So npx shadcdn-ui at latest add button. All right, so we're going to do that. Now you can add multiple components at the same time. You could say add button, alert, avatar, badge, however many you want at the same time. Let's say yes there. All right, cool. So now that that has installed, what it did is it actually basically copied and pasted that for us. It put it into our components under source, components, UI, and then button. So now we have this button component in our application. We have the actual code for it. So we can see that this is using Radix UI, and this button has a bunch of variants. So we have a default button. We see all of these Tailwind utility classes for this, this variant of the button. We have a destructive, outline, secondary, ghost, link. We have different sizes to choose from, and we can easily update these. We can add another size. We can add another variant very easily. And then of course this works with TypeScript, and here's the button actually being rendered. So now we can use this component anywhere in our application. So let's go ahead and use that in our app.tsx file. Let's go ahead and replace Vite is awesome with a button. So let's go ahead and type button. Let's see if it imports it. There we go. So let's go ahead and just say click me. Let's save that and check it out. We'll need to go back into our terminal, npm run dev, and there's our button. Cool. So we can go into the button now and we could say size is going to equal LG for large. Now it's a larger button. We can say variant. We'll say that's going to be, we can see that VS Code is helping me out here. It can be destructive. Let's say that. Makes it red. Let's say ghost. That looks pretty cool too. I think another one is outline. All right, so now you can import any other shadcn components just like we just did with the button. Now let's see how we can get shadcn working in Gatsby. So the first thing that we're going to do is npm init Gatsby. What do we want to call our site? I'll call it shadcn Gatsby. Where do we want to install it? Sure, shadcn Gatsby. We're going to use TypeScript, yes. No, we don't want a CMS. For styling systems, we're going to select Tailwind CSS. Do we want any other plugins? We're just going to skip all of those and say done, and then do this, yes. All right, now we need to update our tsconfig file. So under compiler options, we need to add in some options here for our resolve paths. So our base URL is dot, and then our paths here. So we'll save that. All right, next in our root here, we need to create a new file, and we're going to call it gatsby-node.ts. And then in here, we're going to import star as path from path. And this is all going to help us set our resolve paths. So we'll close that. And now we're ready to initialize shadcn. So let's go back into our terminal. And now we're going to npx shadcn-ui at latest init. Then we're going to answer some questions. Are we going to use TypeScript? Yes. Which style? I'll choose New York. Base color, slate, that's good. Global CSS file, that is going to be located at ./source/styles/globals.css. Do we want to use CSS variables? Yes. Tailwind config, that is the correct. I'll just hit enter. Alias for components, yes, that's good. Alias for utils, sure. Are we going to use server components? No. And then proceed, yes. Now let's go into source, pages, index.tsx. And there's so much boilerplate in here. We don't need any of this boilerplate. So let's just go ahead and get rid of all of it. All right, we'll call this a main, sure. And then let's say Gatsby is amazing. Then let's add some classes. So class name, we're going to say grid. We'll say place items center. And the height is going to be screen, so full height. So that should center this in the screen. So let's save that. Let's open up our terminal. I'll say npm run develop, and let's check it out. All right, so that looks like it's working. Tailwind is working. Now let's actually import some shadcn components. So if we go over to the shadcn documentation, let me open this up a little bit. So you can see all of these different components that we could import. So we're gonna look at the button. We could go to the code here, just copy and paste this code, put it into our application, and it would work. But to make things so much easier, we'll just use the CLI. So let's copy this CLI command, and then let's kill the server. All right, so we're gonna run npx shadcn-ui at latest add button. And then do we wanna install component and dependencies? Yes. So this does install Radix UI as the dependencies. So now if we go over to components, and then under components UI, we now have a button.tsx file. So this is what shadcn is. It's these components. And so we can see that it's using Radix. We can see that we have variants here. So there is a default, destructive, outline, secondary, and so on. And these are all using Tailwind CSS utility classes. We also have sizes that we can choose from, and we can easily update these. We can add another size. We can add other variants very easily. And then of course this uses TypeScript. And then here is where the component is rendered. And so now we can use this component anywhere in our application. So let's go ahead and use this component right here. Instead of Gatsby is amazing, let's use this button component. So button, and we're gonna go ahead and import that. And then we'll say, click me, and then close off that button. All right, let's save that, go to our terminal. Let's run npm run develop. And let's check it out. And there we go. Click me. And so this doesn't quite look right. There's something off. So let's just check and make sure our styles. Okay, so I specified that the styles would be in globals with a plural with the s.css. It's actually global. So when we initialized shadcdn, it created this globals plural. So let's go ahead and just copy all of this. And we're going to paste it all into global. And we should still have the same thing at the top, Tailwind. All right, let's save that and see if that fixes it. There we go. Now it looks right. All right, so for Gatsby, it's global, singular, not plural. So let's go ahead and delete the plural. And we should probably update our components file here because it is referring to globals, plural. So let's say global, and that should fix everything. All right, so now we have our button rendering, looks good. We could change our size. We could say that it's going to be large, so it's a bigger button. We could change the variant. We can say that this is going to be destructive, or we could change it to outline or ghost. I think there's some others, but those are a few. There we go. Looks good. All right. So now you can use any of the other shadcn components in Gatsby just the same way that we did with the button. Now it's time to see how to get shadcn working in Remix. All right. So the first thing we're going to do in an empty folder is npx create-remix at latest, and I'm going to use dot to install it in this current directory. Yes, proceed. We're going to go with just the basics. How we're going to deploy this, let's say Vercel. We're going to use TypeScript and then run npm install, of course. All right, now let's initialize shadcn. So we're going to run npx shadcn-ui at latest init. And we'll answer some questions. We're going to use TypeScript, yes. What style? I'll choose New York style. The slate, base color will be slate. Global CSS file, that is going to be under app/tailwind.css. Are we going to use CSS variables? Yes. And where is our Tailwind config located? It's going to be tailwind.config.js. So I'll just hit enter. For components, that is going to be ~/components. And then for the utils, that's going to be ~lib/utils. And then are we going to use React Server components? We'll say no. And then proceed, yes. Cool. So next we need to install Tailwind. So we're going to npm add as a dev dependency Tailwind CSS latest and auto prefixer latest. So let's run that. All right, that's pretty quick. All right, so now in our root, let's create a file. We're going to call it postcss.config.js. And in here, we're going to export these plugins, Tailwind CSS and auto prefixer. And then in our remix config.js file, under module exports, we're going to add Tailwind to true and PostCSS to true. All right, so now under app and then root.tsx, we're going to import our styles from /tailwind CSS. And then under our const links, we're going to add to this array, rel style sheet, and href is going to be this Tailwind CSS styles that we just imported. We'll save that, close it. And now let's run it and make sure that everything works. So let's open up our terminal and we'll do npm run dev and let's check it out. All right, looks like we've got something working here. So let's go into app and then routes _index.tsx. And then let's just take all of this and we're just going to return a div. Add to this a class name. We're going to say grid place items center. And then the height is going to be screen to make it a full height. And then we'll say remix is amazing. Save that. There we go. It's centered like it should be. It looks like everything is working. We have Tailwind. We have shadcn all set up, ready to go. So let's go ahead and start using a shadcn component. Let's see how that works. So if we go over to the shadcn documentation, you can see all of these different components that we can import. So we're going to look at the button here. Now we could just go to the code here and copy and paste this code into our application and it would work, but it's so much easier to use the CLI. So let's just go right here. We're going to copy this CLI command here. We'll go back into our terminal and let's kill the server. and let's run that command. So it's npx shadcn-ui at latest add button. And we can add as many components at the same time if we wanted to. So we can say add button, avatar, drop-down menu, etc. However many you want. Add them all at the same time if you want. All right, so now do we want to install the components and their dependencies? So we'll say yes. So this is going to install the Radix UI dependency, and then we're going to see what it created for us. So now under app components, there's a UI folder now, and then within that, we now have a button.tsx file. So this is our shadcn button component. We can see that it is using Radix UI. It has variants. All of these different variants are predefined by shadcn. We have all of these great Tailwind CSS utility classes. So we can choose from any of these variants. We also have sizes that we can choose from. And these are so easy to update. We can add another size if we wanted. We could change one of these very easily. We could add another variant. And then we see that it uses TypeScript. And here is the component that it's going to render. So now we can use this component throughout our application. So let's go ahead and replace this with our button. Say click me, and it imported our button at the top already for us. So let's save that back into our terminal, npm run dev, and let's check it out now. And there we go. Now we have our button. So if we go back into the button here, we could add in one of those sizes that we saw. So let's say it's going to be large. We'll save that. Now we have a large button. We could add one of the variants. Let's say variant is ghost. Save that. Now when you hover it, you see the little outline. There's also an outline variant. There we go. And I think there is another one that's called destructive, and that turns it red. So pretty cool. Now you can use any of the other shadcn components in Remix, just like we did with the button. Now let's get shadcn working with Next.js. So another blank folder here. We're going to go into our terminal, and we are going to npx create next app at latest dot. So it's in the current directory. We're going to include the TypeScript flag, the Tailwind flag, and ESLint. So let's go ahead and get all of that installed. Proceed, yes. You want to use the source directory? No, I don't. App router? Yes, I want to use the app router. Would you like to customize the default import alias? No. All right, we got all of that installed. Now we're going to initialize shadcn. So npx shadcn-ui at latest init. We're going to answer some more questions here. Do we want to use TypeScript? Yes. What style do we like? Let's use the New York style. Base color is going to be slate. Global CSS is going to be in the app/globals CSS. So we'll just hit enter. CSS variables, yes, we're going to use those. Tailwind config. Tailwind config is going to be the tailwind.config.ts. And then alias for the components, sure, that's good. Alias for the utils, that looks good. Are we going to use React Server components? Yeah, sure, let's use them. Do you want to proceed? Yes. Cool, so now we should be able to go into the app folder, go into our page, and we've got a ton of stuff. We can see it's already using Tailwind. Let's go ahead and remove all of the boilerplate. We'll keep the main. We're going to change this. We're going to say grid place items center, and the height, we'll set it to the full screen height. We don't need the image import, so let's delete that. And let's say Next.js is awesome. All right, save that. Now let's go into our terminal, and we'll run npm run dev and make sure it's all working. All right, Next.js is awesome. Looks good. It's all centered as it should be. I don't know if you noticed, but getting shadcn working with Next.js was a little easier than the other ones. I don't know, but we're ready now to use shadcn in Next.js. Let me show you how to do that. Let's go over to the documentation here, and we can see all the different components that we can import from shadcn. We're going to use the button right now as an example. So we could just copy this code into a component and it would work, but it's so much easier to use the CLI. So we're just going to copy this. We'll go into our terminal, and let's go ahead and kill our server. Let's paste that command in. So it's npx shadcn-ui at latest add button. Now, if I wanted to add multiple, I could do space, button space, avatar space, drop down menu, etc. As many as you want. Or you could just delete the button here and say npx shadcn-ui at latest add. And then it's going to prompt you to select what components do you want to add. And you can just use your arrow keys up and down, spacebar to select the ones that you want, right? It's like you can select as many as you want, right? So that's another option too. So right now I'm just gonna install the button. Are you ready to install? Yes, let's do that. So it is going to install Radix UI as a dependency, but there are no dependencies for ShadCN. Okay, so now when we go to components, you're going to see components, a UI folder, and then button.tsx. So this is the ShadCN component. So we can see that it is using Radix, and then we have some button variants here. So these are some variants from ShadCN. So they use Tailwind CSS utility classes. We have destructive, outline, secondary, and so on. We have different sizes that are predefined for us. And it's so easy to just go ahead and update these. They're right here in our components folder. We can add another size. We could add another variant. We could change the existing ones, do whatever you want with it. Then we have full TypeScript support. And then here is the component being rendered. So now we can use this component throughout our application. So let's go ahead and replace this with our new button. Let's say click me, and we can see that it automatically imported my button at the top for me. So let's go back into our terminal and npm run dev, and let's check it out. Now we've got a button, click me. Awesome. All right, so on this button, we can now say size is going to equal, let's say large. So now we have a large button. We could change the variant. Let's say the variant is ghost. So now it's a ghost button. We could change it to outline. Now it has that outline around it. Or another one is destructive. And there we go, it makes it red. So now we can add any other of the ShadCN components, just like we did with this button. All right, now let's see the process and flow of building with ShadCN now that we've got it set up in all of the different frameworks. We're going to build this e-commerce storefront with ShadCN, and we're going to use Next.js 13 and the new app directory for this. Now I got inspiration for this project from Antonio, so be sure to go check out his YouTube channel, Code with Antonio, where he builds out something similar with a full backend as well. We're going to begin by building the header. So in our components folder, we're going to create a new file and we're going to call it header.tsx. I'm using React VS Code extension to give me this function stub. I don't need the React import. So let's go ahead and change this div to a header. Let's import this into our page folder under the app directory. So instead of this button here, let's add in our header. Let's get rid of these classes. And we're just going to turn this into a div for now. All right, so our header is back up here at the top. I can zoom in a bit. Let's continue building this out. We'll go back into our header.tsx file. Something we're going to need throughout our site is a container so that we can set a max width. We don't have to do that all over the place. We can just do it once. So in our components, I'm going to add this actually under UI. I'm going to add a container.tsx file. I'm just going to paste this in and we can look at it. So we have container props. So we're going to be passing in children here and we're going to return a div and then pass in the children. So this is just a reusable container. And here's the magic here. MX auto width full and then max width of 7XL. So let's save that. Now we can reuse this container throughout our application. So in our header, we're going to add this container. I'm going to add some classes to our header. So small and above will be flex, small and above will be justify between, vertical padding, horizontal padding, and a border on the bottom. Within the container, I'm going to add two divs. This first div is going to be set to relative, add some padding, flex, item center, justify between, width full. And then this next container, flex, item center. This is where we're going to have our logo and the company name. So for that, we're going to use a Next.js link. So let's go ahead and import the link as well. And here we can enter our store name. We'll just leave that for now. So let's go ahead and save that and see what we have so far. All right, so we've got just store name. We need to add some more things. The next part here is going to be our nav menu. So after the store name div, we'll add in a nav. And then I want to add different nav routes here. So in order to do some nav routes, I'm going to create an object. So let me go back up here to the top. And normally this would be, set on in a database somewhere and you'd import it. We're just going to statically set these in the application. So these are going to be my routes. the href and the label for each one. So now we can loop through these and create links in our header. So back here in our nav, we can now map over our routes. And within this, we're going to add buttons. And we need to import our button. So let's add that at the top. So this is one of the use cases for Shadcn UI, is this button as child with a variant of Ghost. And that is because we're inside this button, we're using it as a link. So we have our key, we have our href, which we're pulling from the route. We have some styles here, and then our route label. So let's save that and let's take a look at it. And because I have these hidden on small screens and then displaying on larger screens, they're not showing up right now because we are going to have a menu that's going to come in on smaller screens eventually. So let me go ahead and reset the view here to 100% and expand that out. Now we have our links. When we hover over them, they have the Ghost variant. So that looks pretty nice. All right, for the next section of our header after the nav, we're going to have another div. And at first we're going to have a shopping cart button. So this button is going to include an icon for the shopping cart, and then a screen reader only will show the word shopping cart. But we need to go ahead and install our icon library. So let me open up the terminal. We need to kill the server. And for this, we're going to use Lucid React. So I'm going to npm install Lucid React. And I'm going to install a specific version 2.6.3.1 because the latest version is having some issues with Next.js. All right, npm run dev. And now next I want to use the shopping cart icon and just give it a height and a width. And let's save that and check it out. Nice. So after the shopping cart button, we're going to add a theme toggle button. We have another button similar to the one above. This time we're going to import the sun and the moon icons from Lucid React. So let's save that, take a look. There we go. Now it doesn't do anything yet, so we'll implement the functionality in just a bit. The last piece that I want is a profile button, and it's going to show the user's avatar. So for that, we're going to need some more Shadcn UI components. So back into the terminal, we're going to kill the server. All right, so let's npx Shadcn UI at latest, and then add our avatar and drop down menu. And then yes, go ahead and install those. I was going to install the required Radix UI dependencies as well. All right, let's npm run dev, start our server again. Now, if we go over here under components UI, you're going to see avatar and drop down menu. All right, and so now we can use those in our application. So under UI, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it profile button.tsx. And I'm going to paste in the code and let's just review it. So I'm importing all of the drop-down menu stuff from Shadcn UI. I'm importing all of the avatar stuff, and I'm creating a profile button. So this is going to return a drop-down menu with a trigger. Within the trigger is the avatar. For the avatar, I'm going to use this image, which I need to bring into my project. And here's the fallback. The fallback is the initials of the user. And then we have the drop-down menu content. So when the drop-down menu comes down, they're going to see my account. There's a separator, and then they'll see profile, billing, subscription, separator, log out. So very simple drop-down menu. So let's go ahead and grab these images. So in the link in the description below, you're going to find a GitHub repo where you can pull these images from. So I'm going to go over into public, and then I'm going to paste these images in from my GitHub repo. So we got some product images, hero image, everything that you need for this project. All right, so let's save this profile button, and now we can use that in our header. And so after this last button in the header, we're just going to bring in this profile button. We'll save it and let's check it out. Now for a quick second there, you saw the user's initials while the image loaded in. All right, now let's make the theme toggle work. The first thing that we're going to need is a theme provider. So under components, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it theme provider.tsx, and I'll paste this in and we'll look at it. So this is going to be a client component. So we're going to enter use client at the top. We have at React. We're importing theme provider and theme provider props, which comes from Next Themes, which we need to install. So let's go into our terminal and let's kill this And let's npm install next themes. All right, and then let's run the server again. So we're good here. Okay, so what we're returning here is a theme provider, and we're going to return the theme provider along with the props and the children. So now we'll be able to use this to wrap our application with this theme provider. So we're going to do that in the layout. So we want this to be around all of our pages. So we're going to enter that in the layout here. So right now in our layout, we have our body, and then we're just passing all of the children inside the body. So we're going to wrap children with the theme provider. Now we do need to import that at the top. And so we have an attribute here of class. The default theme is going to be the system theme, and then enable system. Now, because I want the header to actually be on every page as well, so I should probably move the header into the layout. So let me go over to page, and we're going to take header out of the page. We'll just say content here for now, and we don't need the imports. So let's save that. We'll go to the layout, and at the top of the theme provider, we're going to enter the header. And of course, we need to import that at the top. Right now, because we are using a context provider in the layout, we do need to add use client as well. And now everything is still working. We have our header now in our layout. So now if we go back into our header, we can now use that theme provider. Now again, because we're going to be using a context, we're going to have to make this a use client. And now we can import that use theme from next themes. And then in our header, we're going to grab the theme and the set theme from use theme. And then we can use that in our on click, which we need to add to our toggle button. So we'll add that right here on click, and Copilot is helping me out here. I think that's right. Let's see that. I think that'll work. So let's save that and let's just give it a try. Go over here and hey, it looks like it works. Nice. All right. The last bit that I want to add to this header is to make it responsive. So before we saw that when the screen is too small, you're not going to see the nav menu. So if we do that, you see that it goes away. So we need to add another menu that we can then pull out. And in ShadCN UI, it's called a sheet. So let's go and kill our server, and let's npx ShadCN-UI at latest, add sheet. And then yes, proceed. You can add a -y after this and it won't ask you a question every single time. All right, let's npm run dev again. And now in our UI components, we should see a sheet. All right, so let's add the sheet now into our header. So I'm going to put that up here in right here, right before our link for our store name. I'm going to add it right here. So this is going to be sheet. And let's add some imports at the top, actually. So we're going to import sheet, sheet content, and sheet trigger. Go back down to our sheet here, and I'm just going to paste this in. So in our sheet trigger, we're going to have an icon. That's going to be our menu icon that we need to import from Lucid React. All right, we've got some styles on that. And then in the sheet content, that's going to be on the left side. And then I'm setting some widths. And then inside that, we have another nav. So when it's too small, the nav is going to be on the left sheet. When it's a larger screen, then the nav is going to look regular at the top. And then again, we're just going through our routes again, adding those links into our sheet, into the sheet content. So let's save that and take a look at it. All right, now we have a menu here. And when we click on that, the sheet comes out and we have our 3 links that like we had before. I wonder if I can make this a bit bigger, make it easier to see. So when we get larger, looks like that. We've got all of our icons. And then as it gets smaller, the menu, the nav menu goes away and we have this side menu. Nice. So that's it for the header. All right, let's add the hero section next. Now this section, it only includes one ShadCN UI component, so I'm not going to bore you with typing it all out. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So we're in our page.tsx file and under home, return. So I'm just going to paste it right here. And we're going to reuse this container that we created earlier. So let's go ahead and import that container and the button that we use a little bit further down. We also need the shopping bag. So let's import the shopping bag icon as well. All right, so we have our container. We have a div with some spacing, another div with some padding, and this is going to contain our background image. So we added our images. Again, GitHub repo linked in the description below. You can use any of the assets there. We have our image, hero image there. We have some styles here. And then underneath that, we have a div with a call out inside of it that says featured products. And then inside there, a shop now button. So let's save that and check it out. Cool. So that's what it looks like on a small screen, featured products, big shop now button. And then as we make the screen larger, you'll see that it stops. Remember, we have on that container a max width of 7XL. So it stops right there. Looks really good. And again, if we change or toggle the theme, the colors automatically change as well on the button and the text. Right after this, I want to show all of the product cards. So let's work on that part. So under components and then under UI, I'm going to create a new file and we're going to call it product card.tsx. So for this, we're going to need the card UI component from shadcn UI. So let's go ahead and install that. So npx shadcn -UI at latest add card. All right, and then let's run our server again. And I'll paste this in here and we can take a look at it. So we're going to use next image for the images. We got a link that we're pulling in. We have all of our card components from shadcn UI. And then we're going to import some TypeScript types. We actually need to bring that in. So at the root of our project, let's create a file called types.ts. And for now, it's just going to be one interface product. We're going to add it into this types.ts because we need to use this product in multiple files. And so instead of creating it multiple times, let's do it the right way and create a types file. All right, so now back in our product card, we are bringing in our product type, which is a part of our product card. And so here is our product card component. The entire thing is wrapped in a link, which is eventually would link to the product page. Now we're using our card from shadcn UI with some basic styles. Our card content is going to be the image. So the image is coming from our data, which is being passed into a product card. So we're going to assume that each product has an array of images. And so in that data, we're going to grab the images and we're just going to grab that first image to display on the card here. Some basic styles here. We do have on a hover, it's going to scale it up a little bit, add a little nice animation. And then we have in our card footer, again, from our data, we're going to pull the name of the product, the category of the product, the price, and display that on the card. So that's a single card. We want to have a whole list of cards or a grid of cards. So let's create a new file. So this time under components, I'm going to add a new file called product list.tsx. And let's go over this. So we're going to pull in our product card. We're going to pull in our product types. Remember I said we had to use that multiple times. And then we are going to create an interface here, product list props. And here's our product list component. So we're going to return a div, add some spacing on that. And then within that, we have our grid. So we have grid calls 1 on a small screen, it's 2 columns. On a medium, it's 3 columns, and then 4 columns on a large. We have our gap. And then here, we're going to map over our items that are passed to the product list, which is then going to create each card, passing then each item into each card. So fairly simple. We'll save this and then let's implement that into our page. So at the bottom of our hero, let's see, we have our container, we have this div. I want it to go right here. So within this div, right after our hero, we are going to add in our product list and we're going to pass it a bunch of products. So we need to import the product list, of course. We also need products. So again, in the GitHub repo, you can copy and paste any of this code that you need. I'm just going to bring this at the top here and paste in this dummy list. So we've got a list of products here. It's an array of objects. Each one has an ID, a category, a name, price, and an array of images, although each one only has one image. All right, so that should do it. We have our products. Let's save that. And then let's make this a bit larger. And that looks really nice. So as we hover over these, they have a little bit of animation there. Go back to the light mode. That looks really nice as well. Now, again, the really nice thing about Shadcn UI is that it uses Radix, and Radix has all of the accessibility features built in. So as I am using my keyboard and I'm tabbing through here, everything is very accessible. And again, all by default, nothing that we had to do. Now, as I refresh this, it loads pretty quick. But what if someone is on a slow internet connection? We want to be able to show a skeleton as things load in. And so Shadcn UI has us covered on that. So let's go over to our terminal and let's go ahead and npx shadcn-ui at latest. And then we're going to add the skeleton. And then let's start up our server again. And now what we're going to do is a really great feature of the new app directory in Next.js 13 is the loading file that we can add. So in our app directory, we're going to add a new file and we're going to name it loading.tsx. All right, so I'm just going to paste this in here. Again, we're going to use our container that we created earlier. We're going to use the new skeleton that we imported from Shadcn UI. And then we're going to return this loading function. Within that, we have our container. And then I've just got some div classes. And then I'm just placing the skeletons on the different features that have images that could be loading. So we have this first skeleton is our hero. And then we've got several skeletons here for our products. So let's save that. So just to demonstrate, I'm going to take this container, comment that out, and let's pull in our loading. And we'll save that. And this is what it looks like. So on the light screen, you can barely see that it's kind of changing colors. If we change to the dark theme, you can see that the colors are kind of pulsating a little bit and indicating that something is loading. Again, you can make these skeletons fit in any shape and size that you need. Just add tailwind classes as needed. All right, let's undo that and go back to normal. All right, so now I want to show you how you can customize the theme using Shadcn UI. So we have our normal like light and dark theme, right? But we can actually customize that even more. So let's go over to Shadcn UI under themes, and we can see, let's make this a little bit bigger. We can choose from different colors here. Go to customize, there's more colors in here. So I'm gonna pick this orange color. We can customize the radius that we want for each item and then see what it looks like in light or dark mode. And once you've customized everything, just click copy code and copy these CSS variables. All right, so now all we have to do is go back into our globals.css file, which is under app. And then we have this base layer, remove that, paste in what we just copied from before. We'll save that and let's go back into our app. And now it's already updated. We have orange in all of the areas, even on our hovers, even on when we tab through with our accessibility features, we have the orange color. Shadcn UI really helps us by keeping our components consistent. They're accessible, they're fully customizable, it's easy to work with, and it looks really good by default. So try Shadcn UI in your next project and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you found this video helpful.